Is there anybody else joined yet besides us?
I'm just seeing if we're live on YouTube. We are going to be a small group today. Ryan is not available and we're just a small group anyway, so I think we're good to get started. I'm just checking on, oh, yep, our video is ready to go. So I'll just go ahead and pull up the agenda now.
Okay. Don't understand. All right, I'll just put, you guys can see my background. I'll just do it.
Okay. I'm sorry for the noise. It is super windy here. I'm not sure if it's windy at anyone else's house, but you'll hear the vent in my office flapping once in a while. So Rochelle, if you'd like to get us started.
All right, so we'll call the, what's our pillar called?
Engaged Families and Community.
All right, I'm going to call to order the Engaged Families and Community Pillar Committee meeting. Roll call. Is it just us? I don't know who else.
It is just us, and Ryan is excused this evening.
Okay. So our mission is to equip every student with knowledge and skills necessary to be resourceful and successful. And our vision is that by 2030, the Estacada School District will be the premier school district in the state of Oregon. And our values are to inspire, engage, and achieve. So I guess I'm just, I was going to share just a quick update on engaged, or just kind of some of the things I've been involved in the last week or two that I think relate to this pillar. I went to the town hall, which was really interesting, and it was fun to do the interactive surveys and things like that. So that was kind of a fun way to engage our families in a different way, whether they were online or in person. And I really love the question, what does a 5-star communication look like? Because that one I feel like is a really hard one to measure. So I think that's great that we keep asking. And then I've also just kind of been looking at our website a little bit through a few eyes around like Aspire in one, helping with that. And then the other one is around, and it was around the counselor advisor committee meeting and session. So I'm one of the members of that advising committee, and one of their goals is really to make it easy for families and students to get help. And so as I was, sitting in that session, I was like, oh, well, can you find anything about counseling and advising on our websites? How hard is it to find? And so it was just kind of an interesting looking at each of the buildings' websites, and they all were a little bit different in where it was at, and some didn't have it as much as others. And anyway, again, I know website isn't the first, but at least it's a common source for information. And so anyway, I just thought that was kind of another interesting connection to engaging in communications within our community and district.
Yeah, thank you for that update. I think especially when we're in this virtual format, that web platform and having it be kind of a source of similarity across all of the schools and kind of aligning it is definitely something that could be brought more to the forefront of our focus. And I think it's an important thing to consider, especially again, as our families are not in our schools as much, asking questions in person as much as we would like them to be, or as much as they used to be. So thank you for that update.
Yep. And Ryan has no update.
Ryan is engaging the community through athletics this evening. So he is a key part of this pillar as well. Well, I'll go ahead with the pillar update, and feel free to stop me and ask questions anytime. I'm excited this evening because we got just a sneak peek at our parent engagement survey. I will preface this by saying all the numbers are not in yet. The survey is still open, but we are starting to see numbers coming from that survey. So it's really exciting to see those responses flowing in. And Leticia is actually at River Mill right now, allowing an opportunity for our Spanish-speaking families that might not have access to a device at home to take that survey as well, just making sure that we give everyone the opportunity to take the survey. So again, our goal, which we'll come back to later, is to score a 3.88 on the parent engagement survey. And again, that is live right now. That would be a 0.1 increase from the fall. So I'll go into what it's scoring at right now in a little bit, but I did want to bring attention to some wins. I shared some of these during the board meeting, so I'll skim over some of them, but EMS is celebrating over 350 positive parent outreaches this school year so far. They also have, they've broken 500 views on their learning series and just continuing to move forward with that. I think it's great to see our teachers kind of stepping out of their comfort zone, engaging families in this Facebook Live format that might not be necessarily part of their original job description, but in these virtual times, I think it's great to see them being flexible and intentional about their outreach. We've had 200 plus contacts this month to families from EHS. It's great that we're tracking that, and that's a good start as we begin to hardwire that practice as our families, our teachers are reaching out to individual families to talk about an update on how their child is learning and positive updates as well. And then our student services department is continuing to track that post IEP survey data. And now a drum roll, our early survey data is showing an overall score of 4.03. And our goal was to hit a 3.88. So this 4.03 is an increase of 0.25, which is significantly higher than our goal. Again, that's just preliminary. We have about 150 responses as of about half an hour ago. And last year, or in the fall, we got 550 responses on the survey. So we're at about 20% of the way complete. So the numbers could sway, but you know, I've seen them. I got the data this morning when we were at about 100. We're now at about 150, and the data has really stayed the same even as more responses flow in. It's pretty consistent. So we're seeing exciting early data. That would be a huge increase if we are able to maintain that. And also in the first few days of opening our survey, we've already gotten a healthy number of responses. So I'm excited to see that so far. Any questions on that preliminary data there? Awesome.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Actually, it's of Leticia. I was just wondering, how many families have come in this evening to take the survey?
We haven't had any families this evening.
Okay. Well, thank you again, though, for at least trying and opening up that opportunity for them to come and reaching out to them. And I know as we continue to move forward, I know that you're really trying to support and help those that we haven't heard from. And I would like to continue to work with you if possible. So if you need any support in that, let me know. But thank you again for at least offering it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Leticia made some phone calls and text messages to let families know that service is available. She'll also be available on Tuesday. Some families had mentioned that Tuesday worked better, and I think later in the evening probably works better as well. So she'll be there till 7, and we'll see if Tuesday goes better, and then we'll know that for future. But that was in direct response to some family requests during our Spanish-speaking town hall. They requested that this be available. So I think it's great, and great props to Leticia for hearing that feedback and being like immediately responsive to that. So I think that's, you know, an outstanding offering. So I'm excited that you're offering that. Our next early data is showing a 0.12 increase in our lowest scoring item, and that is I regularly receive feedback from school staff on how well my child is learning. Right now, we're at a 3.33, which is up from a 3.21 in the fall. And I will say that every single question, I believe there's about 15 questions, every single one we have seen growth, whether it's a 0.01, we're not seeing any backslide. We're seeing growth in every single area, which is really exciting to see right now. And then one win that I would just like to celebrate a ton is early data showing a 0.57 increase in our second lowest scoring item, which is I receive positive communication about my child from the school. So a big win for the staff members that have sent postcards home, have intentionally set aside time to ring up and have a phone call with families or an email, just saying, hey, your kiddo did a great job today, or I appreciate them participating in class. Taking that time to just share some positive feedback so far is really paying off, going from a 3.23 to a 3.8. That's outstanding growth. And I think as we continue to hardwire these type of practices into the daily work of our teachers, I think celebrating wins like this and encouraging them and showing that the work they're doing is paying off is really important. And I'm excited once we kind of formalize this process and get more responses to really acknowledge the hard work they've done on this. And then lastly, our Spanish town hall. It was really exciting to have that. We had pretty good participation and even better engagement. People sticking around to stay afterward and ask questions and connect with Leticia and make suggestions. I thought it was great that people felt comfortable doing that and were engaged enough to do that. So that was exciting for me to see. And we received some good feedback. So Leticia, I am going to share, if I can find it, I'm going to share the data that you gave me. I'm just going to switch screens here. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing and find it again.
You're probably going to answer my question because I was like, how many people showed up? I was wondering about the Spanish town or the town hall.
We had about 20 people show up just from a head count. And Leticia, do you kind of want to talk through how it went from your perspective and the feedback you got?
Yeah. So I have actually been in contact with about over 70 families in the last couple weeks, calling some of them multiple times. And so as you can see, I hosted my first Spanish speaking parent night just last week, and it was a pretty successful event with a lot of participation and definitely needed. So over the course of these phone calls and the parent meeting, the same common themes have come up. And one of them is communication needs to be in that family's preferred language. So communication and those emails are being sent out in a language that the families cannot understand at this time. I've heard a lot from the people that were there that they have a preference of phone calls and text messages. So we are working hard to set these families up with additional tech help, home visits, and resources. And then, of course, lastly, offering more parent nights to get the district information out. I think our families really appreciated that we held this one. They were engaged and they actually wanted more nights like this. So they definitely want to be part of the team that moves their schools forward. I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. And so we're improving our communication with our Spanish speaking families. And I'm hoping this helps.
I have a question. It's interesting, you know, I appreciate the two different sessions, but I also know, like at the middle school, when Mr. Hargrave first joined the middle school, and I'm assuming he probably is still doing this, his events he would do bilingually. You know, he would do both in English and Spanish together. And I'm just curious if you considered that, or if you think the 2 separate town halls is the right direction to go still, or I'm just curious.
I think for myself in this meeting in particular is that they were getting to know me, putting a face to this person who continues to call them weekly. So that was very helpful for me.
Great question too, Rochelle. And I know I did hear from a staff member who had attended in the past what we might call, a Spanish parent night, where the person leading it was speaking in English, and then we had to stop and wait for the translation. And those staff members are saying that this night that Leticia did flowed way more smoothly, just because we didn't have that stop and trying to
back and
translation.
forth.
Yeah, and I imagine moving forward, I think it's a great thought for Leticia just to kind of think about, and for us as well, that when there are those specific nights when it's like super important information, we may have to do it simultaneously and translate. But if it's possible to do it 2 separate, again, we don't want to segregate anybody. That's not our goal. But to keep the flow and the continuity going, and for parents to be able to ask their questions quickly and get a response quickly, I think is what happened at Leticia's evening event. And it was a great note. So we need to note that moving forward though too. So great question.
Yeah, and I understand the difference, the need for both, but then there's also, you think about those events where we want to bring everybody together, and how can we also make everybody feel welcome and can communicate and understand what's happening at the event.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think doing both is important. And one thing I appreciated from Leticia's event was she specifically catered to some of the themes that she had been hearing from rounding with our emerging bilingual families. Some need for additional tech support, because there's an extra step if you're translating a SMORE newsletter or a parent square. There's additional steps there that our families can sometimes need support in. And so Leticia did the same in presentation that Superintendent Carpenter did, collected some of the same info that we see here, but then also added on additional tech support at the end to specifically meet the needs of our families that she was hearing from them. So I thought it was a really cool way to go above and beyond to meet additional needs. And I was happy that, we scheduled it the day following Ryan's town hall, so that it wasn't this big lag in information. And I thought it was really well executed.
Great.
All right, well, I will swap back over then.
So those were the results, and that was fun that they got to do the voting too.
Yeah, I'll pull it back up for another second so you can look. So we asked the same questions, in person, hybrid, virtual, 4-day week, 5-day week. And then we talked about what are their priorities in terms of building and facility upgrades. So, it's super important to get input from everyone. So we were happy to get the same input that we can put just back into, the broader data that we collected on that town hall night. So it was interesting. They voted pretty in line with our first town hall survey. So we see a lot of consistencies, but happy to see AC was a big winner in the building improvement section. But we also did the same 5-star. What did we do well? What can we improve on for next year? And of course, this looks a little bit different than in our first town hall, just because there's communication in Spanish, and we saw a lot of comments on that in what does 5-star communication look like to you. One thing I thought was very interesting was I noticed from our Spanish speaking families, very clear preference for text messages or phone calls over some other forms of communication. And Leticia, is that something you've typically seen in rounding as well?
Yeah.
So
they are pleased to get those phone calls when I do call.
I think that's interesting to note, and I think it's a really good use of Leticia's time to make that personal connection via phone call, and I'm glad that's being done as well. And that we're even just asking the question of what do you prefer, so that we can differentiate that communication for them. I'll give you guys a second to look over that, and I'm going to grab my charger really quickly.
And were those the only 3 at the bottom for what can we improve on for next year?
Yeah, can you scroll
there you
up? Okay.
Yeah,
I
the
like-
excitement for that return to in-person was just awesome. I called probably 15, 20 families, and some of those families were just ecstatic.
It's also really great to see I mean, obviously the second to last bullet, like you just said, I think that's what everybody wants. And then their very last bullet though, I thought that's very interesting. Student pickup process to continue at the classroom doors. That's great
I thought
feedback.
so too.
Yeah, wonderful.
I like how specific it is. One thing I also like is they want the return to in-person becomes clear on here, but also in the what did they do well. It seems like we did get a lot of accolades for continuing to keep the learning process going and executing hybrid and virtual learning. So it's great to see that that did work and we did get some positive feedback on that. So I, appreciate getting all of that input as well. So I thought Leticia did a nice, really intentional job of collecting all that data. And that was exciting to see. And then also we provided food and childcare at that event. And we also had bilingual books for students to take home. And that seemed to be a big hit with some of the kiddos and their families. So that was really fun to see.
Cool.
Going back to the agenda, those are most of the wins that we saw coming in this month, and excited to see that formative data. I'll switch over to barriers now. This is partially a win and partially a barrier. We're asking the question now, what does 5-star communication look like to you? Asking it in rounding, asking it in meetings and pulse checks, just to get that defined communication and to see some of these common themes emerge, because good communication looks very different for different people. And we are definitely seeing themes emerge when we ask that. A lot of people say that we are doing a really good job with communication. There's a lot of communication, there's varied communication, it meets different needs. But it's kind of a double-edged sword of, if we vary our communication to meet a lot of different needs, that means there is a lot of communication because it's coming from so many different platforms. And one thing we've seen so much, I've talked about this before, is the overwhelming amount of communication that is coming out. And we've seen that 5-star communication, a lot of times we just hear streamlining communication and having it look similar as my students transition from grade to grade or classroom to classroom or building to building. So some of the steps that we would like to take are really increasing our parent square mastery so we can decrease our dependence on some of these other random programs that are still kind of floating around out here. So we can have parents starting to delete some apps, starting to have to check less emails, a more consistent flow from K to 12. So increasing our parent square dependence and decreasing our dependence on things like Remind and Class Dojo and all of these other things that are floating around out there. I know there's some sporting program ones as well. And then just, I think over the summer, one of our big projects is creating a centralized communication place where we can all see what each other is sending out, so that I can look and see that Mr. Hargrave already sent out to his families a safety message. I don't need to double that up on the district's behalf, so that we can kind of work together and the right hand and the left hand just work really seamlessly to reduce some of those overlapping communications. So that is one that we're seeing, and that's a barrier that I think we're going to have to focus on and adjust our plans to help tackle that. Another one is a desire for even more individualized communication from students, teachers. And, we are seeing that hardwiring of individual reach out from teachers to students and students' families, but families are still really saying they want more of that. So that's good to see and good feedback. I think that can be encouraging to our staff that, hey, families really want to hear from our teachers, and they take what they say really seriously. And we have had a couple of Canvas sessions that I think have gone over well, and families have really enjoyed and said they got good feedback from that, because I think Canvas is a great way to get some of the individualized content, as well as PowerSchool, so you can get those individualized updates on the students' behalf. So those are the two themes that we're really seeing from 5-star communication and what we can do to improve, that I think we're gonna really focus on and hone in on as we build action plans post this 90 days. Any questions on that?
I think it's great to have visibility across the district of all the communications. I think that'll really help. Like you said, not to duplicate, a same topic, that's already been sent. So I think that's good to hear. And I like the idea of consolidating into one primary platform for communication. I think the individualized communication from students, teacher, I think that's interesting. I mean, it seems like kind of dig into that a little bit more. It's like, well, what kind of individualized communication are you looking for? Are you looking, I guess I don't understand. Do you know more specifics around that?
What I've heard is, like, I get regular progress reports, but if my child is failing or not doing well on a standard, like, I want a follow-up phone call from my child's teacher on where my child is falling short, what they can do, if they're missing some assignments, what's going on there, how can they catch up. Just especially when students are maybe struggling, or there's a miss there on that progress report, that the teacher is following up to connect with families, and proactively and reactively reaching out before a student falls behind and after a student has fallen behind. So that's a lot of what I have heard. Trevor, have you heard things along that vein as well?
Yes, you're exactly right. But my wonder is, if we try to kind of go to maybe I don't know, one way to reach out and stuff like that. I know a lot of teachers have, say like Class Dojo or whatever, and parents are easily, it's a quick app, and that's one way that they can get that individualized communication. So that's something to think about, that we might, even though we're trying to get, maybe it's district wide stuff is all kind of funneled through one way, but then teachers have their each individual way of reaching parents. We might have to think about that too.
Yeah, that's one thing I really want to be mindful of. And one of the reasons we haven't just, I know some districts have just mandated everyone's going to use Parent Square and that's all we're going to use. And especially this year, when there's a lot of change going on and a lot of initiatives we're focusing on, I don't think we're at the point where we can just cut teachers off from a communication tool that's really working for them and their families. I think that's definitely a more thoughtful approach. And I've noticed over just the past month or so, since we're back from spring break, I feel like teachers have finally felt like they've had a little bit more breathing room. And I've had a couple people reach out to me and say, I'm kind of interested in Parent Square. Like, could you tell me what that would look like if my classroom started to use that? So I kind of wanted to wait until the tide turned. We got used to it as a district, learned how to really master it, and then start rolling it out to teachers, not as a forced top-down initiative. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So can Parent Square be like, or like an athletic communications, like can you create like groups that you can communicate with in there? Like,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do agree. I mean, I think that there's something about, just a quick text. It's a similar thing, right? You're texting back and forth instead of some big full-blown email. But I think you're right, Maggie. I mean, there's so many different initiatives and technologies. And I know we've learned a ton this last year. And I'm excited to see kind of what we come with for the next year. Because like Canvas, I know, and I don't remember if it was a school board meeting or what. Nope, it might have been the counselor committee. I don't know. Too many meetings these last few weeks, but just some feedback about, consistency in Canvas and the inconsistency in Canvas, and how they're really struggling. Our kids are really struggling navigating between classes and where do I find assignments, and one's using a calendar and one's using this within, even though, Canvas is so, it seems like flexible, and each teacher can kind of configure it and set it up how they want, which is, again, great, but also challenging for, I think, some of the kids and parents as they're navigating between the different classes.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that is emerging just so consistently, not just with Canvas, we see it with Canvas, Parent Square, communication in general, the website, is consistency. And one win that I haven't really mentioned much is our human resources team with the Engaged Families and Communities pillar just rounded and connected with buildings to see what expectations were set for teachers in their communicating through Canvas, communicating with parents. And I think only after we kind of flush out the expectations that have been set can we start to align and streamline and create more consistency in communication. So I really appreciate human resources doing that kind of behind the scenes work. And one of their goals is to, when they're doing onboarding this next year, create really consistent communication expectations and to start creating that consistency as we onboard new people. And so I'm really excited to see that occurring. And I think the more consistent we can be, the better. One other thing I am thinking about as we shift more to Parent Square and aligning some things is having some pilot teachers, a group of volunteers that really like the idea of Parent Square. I've already had 3 people reach out to me that are interested in it, and get them going on Parent Square and kind of have them be ambassadors and supports for other teachers and staff members in their building on Parent Square, and kind of increase confidence that way. So it'll definitely be a slower rollout, but I think we'll get some more quality buy-in and a really more consistent process if we do it that way.
Cool.
Nothing to do with our agenda tonight, but you keep using the word consistent, which I think is very valuable. And just as a side note, the Standards of Excellence Committee chose the word consistency or consistent as one of our core values. So you'll see that. I think, Maggie, you were part of seeing that earlier this year. So it's just a cool thing that we're trying to be consistent all around.
And it's like, I don't want to, like, I feel like consistency is important. I don't want to squish creativity. You know what I mean? It's like there's that, there's like the template, but then I don't know. I don't want to, there's an interesting balance.
It's a hard line to walk. I collected input pretty early on when we took on Parent Square on, okay, what apps can we get rid of? And even things like Class Dojo, they have the little points that students earn and little things like that, of course, not every app is going to work exactly the same. So I think we kind of have to weigh the unique ways that teachers choose to interact with the desire for families to have a less overwhelming experience. So it's just discussions that we have to keep having.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just was going to say, we want our teachers to consistently communicate with families. But Rochelle, like you're saying, we're leaving the creativity up to them right now, whether it's email, phone call, home visits, Class Dojo, Parent Square, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you moving forward, and creativity, or the word inspire and innovative, are also words of standards of excellence too. So we do see the balance there. Good point.
That's excellent. I just had a quick clarifying question. When we talk about engaged families and communities, are students a part of that too in our pillar?
That's a great question. Our students are actually, their data and voice is collected under the inclusive culture pillar. So we have a student feedback survey, and some of the questions are similar on the parent engagement survey. So we just rolled out the student engagement survey as well. So their voice is collected. It's just not under this pillar because they are kind of more internal stakeholders a little bit than our families and community. Not to say that our families and community are on the outside, but our students are a part of our daily work a little bit more. The student surveys are really well thought out and really well executed, even down to smiley faces and frowny faces in kindergarten, all the way up to really thought-provoking questions at the high school level. So I'm excited to see how that one pans out. One thing I have seen that is very interesting is one question is similar on the parent and student survey. It's the "my school is clean" question. And I've noticed that the student and parent data correlates very closely. So it's good to see that parents are talking with their students and having a similar view on how clean our schools are. So that's just an anecdotal side note. Next, I'll move on to, one other barrier that I've mentioned a few times that we're still struggling with, that I hope this parent survey will be an opportunity to address, is a struggle to get leading data and a struggle to get answers on pulse checks, and just the shorter assessments that we give our families. So I'm really hoping to do a thorough parent rollout, a Facebook Live, where we talk to them about how we use their data and what action plans we put into place, so we can kind of start to close the loop on the feedback that they give us. And I hope that that will encourage families to start giving us feedback more frequently, because we make action plans based off of their feedback, and it's a little bit more difficult than student learning standards, where we always have that data and we're always checking that. With families, we're really at their mercy and relying on them to give us their honest feedback. So I hope that by being more transparent about what we're doing with their input, that we can encourage them to give it more frequently. So that continues to be a barrier. And you see Leticia out at Rivermill tonight, just really working to collect data, and we just hope that we can increase our survey responses on that, but also increase responses on pulse checks as well. And next, our improvement in action. Again, I said this at the board meeting, and it's the same right now. We have 13 out of 14 action plans in progress or completed right now. We have one that's a little stuck in the Parent Square Mastery, but we're working through that. And I've seen our Parent Square usage and utilization go up a ton since the beginning of the school year. And the things that people are getting stuck on now are at such a higher level than they were at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, we were getting stuck on, how do we send out a text message? Right now, we get stuck on, okay, we're looking at the text message analytics, and we see 17% of our families aren't getting the message in time. What can we do to increase that? So I really, want to say, even though we're still working on our Parent Square Mastery, I do think we're making a lot of progress. We're just utilizing it a lot more robustly now. So, and then over the next 30 days, move that red action plan forward, troubleshoot our stucks in yellow. Hopefully increase our survey participation. We were at 550 last year, in the fall, sorry. I would like to get to 750 in the spring, which seems lofty, but we did increase by 200 last time. So I would like to increase that, keep that momentum up. Last time we went from 350 to 550. So I'd like to go up to 750. So we'll see if we can get there. And then once we receive those survey results, I really want to make sure we're celebrating those wins to give our staff the motivation to keep going on that parent outreach, and then close the loop with families and do a Facebook Live and Super 60 Seconds and all those tools that we use to show how we're using their data moving forward. Is there anything you guys would like to see out of the next 30 days in terms of this pillar?
I have a question around, so again, I guess I'm trying to go back to this whole engaged community and families. And I know Superintendent Carpenter has very, very high expectations of streaming and making sure that the those who cannot physically attend our meetings, or, whatever communication we want to, share, that they can find us online. Do you have a specific action item in your action plan, or is that something specific to his, personal goals or development goals?
That's a great question. We don't have anything that specifically calls out live streaming, because they usually go a little bit broader. But in both his and my action plan, we have a question on the superintendent or the Office of Communication uses a variety of different methods to communicate. And live streaming is just a big one of those, especially right now when we're not having things like family breakfasts. So that's kind of how we capture that data. But I do think it would be interesting to specifically isolate streaming, just because it is one that we're continuing to focus more efforts on and needing to specifically put efforts behind improving. So,
well, and it feels like it's not just this pillar, right? It's operations pillar. I mean, it's crossing so many, and I feel like it's taking a lot of resources. And I just want to make sure that we're properly measuring it, we're properly setting it as the right priority, and levels of what does success look like. I mean, because I just want to make sure that we're I don't know, just keeping it in mind as we're setting expectations and goals.
Yeah, I like that, because we're always looking at how many followers are we getting on YouTube. We have the graphs of how many people are watching our live streams. We do a plus delta on what we need to improve on our live streams, but I don't think we've set kind of a benchmark for what success does look like. So that's something that we could definitely bring to the group and get kind of an explicit bar that we can try to reach. So I appreciate that.
And I always really I like stretching, but I like realistic goals too. Kind of like you've got 13 of 4 now action plans instead of everybody's action plans that you're measuring, right? I want to make sure that, we're setting the right goal, and not saying 100% of our families are going to, attend a school board meeting, because that's just not realistic, right? So, in my opinion.
Yeah, with our, I think our nutrition services program is such a good example of setting realistic goals. And, we've seen this slow, sustainable growth in her Facebook her Facebook following, and the engagement that's been going on there, and really being thoughtful about how many people are actually engaging in that, and just that slow growth. So I think I would like to see something similar in our live streams. So
Nice.
I will definitely take that to the group. I think that would be
Yeah.
really helpful as we focus a lot of efforts and time on it. Yeah. Okay. So next month, I look forward to hopefully having the results of our parent engagement survey. It does usually take about a month to formally close that process out and to collect all of the feedback. We leave our parent engagement survey open for longer than our employee engagement survey, because families have a lot going on, and we want to give them about 2 weeks to take the survey. So you'll continue to see communications. This is one area that we will be overwhelming and repetitive, is getting the news out to take that survey. And then I'm excited to talk next month about either what outreach we have done or what outreach we plan to do in response to the feedback that we receive. And then one other thing that I did want to bring up that is a little bit out of our parent engagement goals, but in community engagement, is we're launching a community mailer shortly. Very excited about that. And one thing that Improvement Science has done to improve that process is we'll be having an insert in the middle of that mailer that's a short survey that people can complete either online or mail it into us, that has some questions about district finances, and does this communication work for them, and do they feel informed on what's going on in the district? How did they feel about our facilities? What's their top facility priority? So we can really start collecting data on some of that community engagement, because community is a hard one to collect data on because they are not a very captive audience. So I'm excited to begin collecting that intentional data. And that's just something that's come out of improvement science, and excited to get a baseline on that.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Good idea.
Well, that is all I have for this evening. Is there anything else? Any questions you have?
I do not. I was just checking. So our next meeting is
The
May
3rd.
3rd.
Yeah.
All right. As far as I can tell, that works for me today. So.
Well, I will follow up a week or so before, and we'll make sure that works again for everyone. And I appreciate, everyone being flexible and still committing to these, even if we change them around. I think that's fine, and it's a crazy time. So I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks.
Well, thanks.
Right.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.